Centuries ago, according to the folklore of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, the archipelago we know today didn't exist. Instead, the land was one continuous mass, a single island home to the ancient Nicobarese tribes. Despite sharing the same coastline, these tribes lived under a severe social law. Marriage outside of one's own village was strictly forbidden, creating deep-seated animosity between neighboring communities that lasted for generations. A young man named Tatara became a rare exception to this culture of division. He was known across the island for his immense strength and a selfless nature, often traveling to distant villages just to help those in need. This text describes one of his most unusual traits, a wooden sword he always wore at his waist. He never used it in combat, but the islanders believed the wood held a divine, supernatural power that Tatara chose to keep dormant. In the village of Lapati, a young woman named Vamiro lived a quiet life. She was known for an enchanting singing voice that seemed to hold its own kind of magic, drawing people toward the sound. One evening, Tatara was resting by the shore after a long day of work when he heard Vamiro's song drifting over the water. He followed the melody until he found her, completely captivated by the music. Their conversation was brief. As soon as Vamiro realized Tatara was a stranger from another village, she panicked. The fear in her eyes made the invisible barriers of their society suddenly visible. The two began meeting in secret, ignoring the laws of their people. As they spent more time together, their bond grew into a forbidden love that directly challenged the tradition of their ancestors. The breaking point arrived during the Pashu Parva festival in Pasa village. It was a massive gathering where all the local tribes came together for music, food, and displays of strength. While the crowd celebrated, Tatara was distracted. He moved through the festival with no interest in the events, searching only for Vamiro along the thousands of people. He found her weeping in the shadows of the coconut groves. As he tried to comfort her, her mother discovered them, and her shouts of anger quickly drew the attention of the surrounding villagers. This passage captures the intensity of the scene. The villagers, led by Vamiro's mother, surrounded Tatara and began to insult him, using the weight of their ancient traditions to humiliate him in front of the entire tribe. Tatara stood motionless, caught between his grief for Vamiro and his mounting fury toward a society that refused to see them as human. Tatara reached for the wooden sword at his waist. He drew the blade and plunged it deep into the earth at his feet. He began to drag the sword with supernatural strength. The ground groaned and began to rip open, following the path of the blade, until a massive fissure split the island from one end to the other. The island broke apart. Tatara and Vamiro were suddenly separated by an expanding abyss, standing on two different pieces of land as the ocean rushed in to fill the gap between them. In Nicobarese folklore, this is how Little Andaman and Car Nicobar were formed. The two islands now sit 96 kilometers apart, divided by the sea. Tatara and Vamiro were never reunited. The rushing waters carried them to different horizons, and their final fates were lost to the waves. The sight of the earth splitting apart left the surviving tribes in collective shock, forcing them to confront the consequences of their long-standing hatred. As the Path Pravesh text explains, the loss of their land led to a total shift in their culture. To prevent such destruction from happening again, the tribes abolished the old laws and began intermarrying between villages. The barriers between the villages fell, and the isolation that once defined their world ended. Centuries later, the Nicobareses still tell this story of an island that had to break before its people could finally come together.